It started with a few carefully chosen words from Barack Obama during prime time. Within hours, those words set off a storm that left Donald Trump furious, Congress unsettled, and millions of Americans asking the same question: who can you really trust? Under the harsh studio lights, Obama stayed composed. It was a Wednesday night in Washington, the kind of moment reserved for voices the nation couldn't ignore. Across the country, people tuned in, some out of curiosity, others because they'd heard he was about to say something unusual. What no one expected was just how sharp, direct, and explosive his message would be. He leaned forward, hands clasped, his voice calm but firm. After a pause, he spoke. There are ongoing violations in this White House. They're not just embarrassing, they're dangerous, threatening the very foundation of the presidency. The audience, told to stay quiet, shifted uneasily. Even the host looked stunned. This wasn't the cautious Obama people expected. The camera tightened on his face as he laid out the charges: hidden financial ties with corporations holding government contracts, reckless handling of classified files, and pressure on agencies to bend the rules. Each point hit hard, not shouted, but more powerful for that reason. People deserve honesty, he said. The presidency is built on trust, and that trust is being broken. Across the country, living rooms fell silent as families leaned closer to their screens. In Des Moines, diner staff left plates cooling on the counter as they stared at the screen in the corner. The host, sensing history unfolding, pressed him. "Mr. President, are you saying the current president is committing crimes in office?" Obama didn't blink. "I'm saying we're watching a pattern of behavior that is both unethical and illegal. The longer we stay silent, the worse the damage becomes." The audience, bound by the show's rules, stayed quiet, but in living rooms across the country, silence was broken. Social media lit up instantly. People clipped the broadcast and posted it within seconds. Hashtags surged to the top of X, Instagram, and TikTok. Commentators added headlines like "Obama exposes Trump" and "Allegations rock the White House." But what grabbed people most wasn't just the accusations, it was how he delivered them. Calm, steady, and precise, his words carried a weight that anger never could. Inside the Oval Office, tension was already rising. In the host's earpiece, the director's voice cracked. "We're making history right now." The host nodded and asked, "Why speak out today?" Obama leaned back, as if he'd been waiting for that moment. "Because silence is complicity. If those who know better say nothing, the system rots. And I care too much about this country to let that happen." His words drew a sharp line, not just between two men, but between two versions of America, one clinging to denial, the other ready to face the truth. Outside the studio, the reaction was immediate. By the time the interview ended, shockwaves had spread across the nation. In bars, dorms, and living rooms, the clip replayed nonstop. Obama leaning forward, his tone steady, his accusations clear. People weren't just watching. They were analyzing every word, every pause, every glance. In a Dallas sports bar, even the game on the big screen was forgotten as the crowd buzzed with disbelief. "Did you hear that?" a man whispered over his drink in a crowded bar. His friend shook his head. "I never thought he'd say that." Not live on TV. Around them, people passed phones back and forth, replaying the 30-second clip where Obama used the word illegal. That single word sent the room buzzing. At Arizona State, students sprawled across couches, watched TikTok feeds explode. "He just accused him of breaking the law on live television," one student said, holding up her phone. On the screen, hashtags like #ObamaBombshell and #TrumpExposed shot to the top, racking up millions of views in minutes. Cable networks scrambled. CNN dropped a trade segment for a panel of shocked analysts. Fox News rushed to defend Trump, and MSNBC flashed a red banner of Obama. Trump engaged in ongoing violations. Yet the most powerful reactions weren't on TV, they happened at home. In Dayton, Ohio, retired teacher Charles Reynolds sat with his wife, frowning at the flickering screen. "He doesn't talk like that unless he's sure," he muttered. His wife, who had lived through Watergate as a teenager, said nothing. But the unease in her eyes spoke volumes. In Miami, A Cuban-American family gathered at their kitchen table. Replaying the clip on a laptop, the grandmother, usually quiet about politics, whispered, "I trust that man," the grandmother whispered. "He wouldn't say it if it weren't true." Our grandson frowned. But what if it's just a distraction before the election? The debate spilled across the table, voices clashing with emotion. Reporters rushed to keep up. By midnight, journalists in Washington were already chasing sources. Politico asked, "What did Obama just set in motion?" The Washington Post pushed an alert citing Justice Department officials, who confirmed quiet concerns about classified documents had been circulating for months. What once looked like a jab now felt like a timed grenade. Online, the divide was sharp. Trump supporters cried betrayal, Obama supporters praised his courage, and independents asked the chilling question, if Obama's right, what happens next? Newsrooms buzzed. In Los Angeles, a producer ripped off her headset and muttered, "Every channel's on this. It's not a story anymore, it's the story." Overnight polls hinted at cracks among independents. Even as Trump's base held firm, analysts spoke of credibility and trust. Obama's calm delivery had sliced through years of noise like a scalpel, whether scandal, spectacle, or something darker. One thing was undeniable: America was glued to its screens, and while the public argued, inside the White House, Trump was preparing to strike back. By sunrise, the West Wing was tense. Aides moved briskly but spoke in hushed voices, phones buzzing non-stop as televisions replayed the interview on every floor. Staffers kept their heads down in the halls. Everyone knew Trump had seen the interview. Everyone was bracing for the explosion. It came at 6:12 a.m. On Truth Social. In all caps, he wrote, "Obama is a fraud. This is a deep state hoax. He should be ashamed." Within seconds, screenshots spread across every platform. Observers noted he had fired off 4 posts in under 20 minutes, each angrier than the last. By late morning, the White House announced an emergency press briefing. Reporters rushed to the Brady Room, where the podium stood waiting under the seal of the presidency. The room was packed wall to wall when Trump walked in. His face was red, his tie askew, his jaw tight. Without taking questions, he launched straight into attack mode. "Barack Obama is a disgrace," he shouted, jabbing the air with his finger. "What he did last night lying on national television was the most disgusting thing I've ever seen. This is nothing but a pathetic attempt to bring down your favorite president." The room erupted as reporters shouted over one another, the noise so loud the press secretary slammed her hand on the podium to restore order. But Trump only leaned into the chaos. He thrived on it. "You think Obama cares about the truth? He doesn't," Trump continued. "He cares about himself. He's working with corrupt media, radical prosecutors, and a crooked system to stop it. Won't work." Trump shouted, "We're stronger than ever," from the third row. A CNN reporter pressed, "Mr. President, do you deny mishandling classified documents as he suggested?" Trump's glare was sharp. "I deny it. Totally deny it. There's nothing there. They've been after me for years, and every time nothing. You know why? Because I've done nothing wrong." The tension was electric. Cameras zoomed in, catching every bead of sweat, every sharp gesture. The contrast with Obama's calm, lawyerly tone the night before was impossible to miss. Obama had spoken like a professor presenting facts. Trump raged like a man cornered. When a Reuters journalist tried to ask about Obama's credibility, "Give me a break. He spied on my campaign. He ruined this country, and now he wants to play hero." No. He's the problem. He's always been the problem. What began as a short briefing dragged into nearly an hour of insults and denials. Trump mocked Obama's tone, mocked the press, mocked Republicans who questioned him. At one point, he slammed the podium so hard the microphone shook. Reporters exchanged wary glances. They'd seen Trump angry before, but this was different. This was raw, unrestrained. By the time he stormed out without taking more questions, the story was already set. Networks sliced the footage into highlight reels. Splashing headlines across screens, "Trump explodes after Obama allegations. President denies misconduct." Across the country, Americans compared the two moments side by side: Obama's calm against Trump's fury, Obama's precision against Trump's anger. For many, it simply confirmed what they already believed. But for others, it was the first time doubt began to creep in. Early polling reflected that shift. Independents weren't reassured by Trump's fire, they were shaken by it. By afternoon, news networks were running what anchors called the split-screen presidency. On one side, Obama sat relaxed in his chair, voice steady, words sharp but measured. On the other, Trump stood at the podium, flushed and restless, his tone uneven. The contrast needed no commentary. It was the story. In a Portland coffee shop, college students huddled over a laptop. "You don't have to agree with Obama to see the difference," one said. "He looks like he has facts. Trump looks like he's losing it." A girl beside him replayed a clip. "See that? Obama barely moves. That's power." In a hardware store in Lincoln, Nebraska, older men watched the same footage. One lifelong Republican muttered, "He's making us look weak. Doesn't matter if you like him or not, he's rattled." His friend shot back, "Or maybe that's just fighting." But his uneasy stare at the screen told another story. Pollsters picked up the mood instantly. Focus groups in swing states reported the same theme. Obama looked credible. Trump looked chaotic. In suburban Phoenix, a woman admitted, "I didn't vote for Obama, but I trust him more than Trump after today." In Milwaukee, a man said quietly, "I like Trump's policies, but I don't like seeing him that out of control." Inside newsrooms, producers worked nonstop to package the narrative taking shape. News networks worked overtime stitching montages together. MSNBC ran a split-screen reel that went viral: Obama's calm line, "People deserve honesty," immediately followed by Trump shouting, "Obama is a disgrace." The contrast was brutal. CNN analysts called it a masterclass in opposites. Even conservative commentators admitted privately that the optics were a disaster. The difference bled into comedy, too. Late-night hosts replayed the clips back-to-back, pausing after Obama's steady delivery before cutting to Trump's rant. The audience howled. Hashtags like #CalmVsChaos and #SplitScreen trended all night. Then came the numbers. Within 24 hours, Quinnipiac released a flash poll showing a 7-point swing among independents. 62% said they trusted Obama's word. Only 34% believed Trump's denial. Headlines screamed the results, framing it not as a feud but a test of credibility. Inside the White House, panic set in. "It's not just what he said, it's how it looks. We're losing the optics battle," one aide told Politico off the record. Another added, "Every time networks run those clips side by side, you fall further behind." Obama, meanwhile, stayed silent. No tweets, no follow-ups, no press stops. That silence, controlled, deliberate, only made the contrast sharper. While Trump flooded the internet with angry posts, Obama let his interview stand alone, confident the replays would carry his message. Across the country, people kept comparing. In Tulsa, a mother watched with her teenage daughter. "One looks like a leader," she whispered. "The other looks like he's panicking." Her daughter, barely interested in politics, didn't look away from the screen. "Even I can see that," she said. The split screen was no longer just a TV gimmick, it had become a cultural shorthand, a snapshot of the nation's choice: composure versus chaos, facts versus fury, steadiness versus storm. But inside the White House, panic was real. Staffers described the West Wing as combustible, people walking faster, speaking softer, and doing everything possible to stay out of the president's line of fire. The fallout from Obama's words wasn't just on the airwaves, it was inside the walls. In the Roosevelt Room, senior advisors gathered around a long oak table. Half-finished coffee cups, papers marked with poll numbers, and wall-mounted TVs blaring the split-screen coverage set the scene. Kellyanne sat with her arms crossed, scanning notes, while Stephen paced the floor. "He's losing the optics war," Stephen muttered. "Every channel is running that damn side-by-side. It's killing us." Kellyanne snapped back, shifting the strategy, then changed the narrative. "Attack the source. Attack the motive. People don't care about calm and collected. They care about loyalty. The words hung in the air as the door suddenly burst open. Trump stormed in, tie loosened, face still red from the briefing. He jabbed a finger at the TV on the wall, showing Obama's steady face. "Turn that off." "Turn it off." An aide scrambled for the remote. Trump dropped into the chair at the head of the table, slamming his palm down. "We're not going to sit here and let that guy lecture us. He's a failure. He's jealous. He's working with the deep state and you all know it." Stephen cleared his throat. "Mr. President, with respect, the anger isn't landing well outside your base. Independents don't win elections. Loyalty does," Trump snapped. "Obama's lying. Everyone knows it. Our people need to hear me say it." Louder and louder, from the corner, a younger aide spoke hesitantly. "Sir, maybe if we provide documentation, something to refute documentation." Trump's eyes narrowed. "We don't need documentation. We need to fight. Fight him. Fight the press. Fight the whole crooked system. Nobody cares about papers, they care about strength." The room went heavy. Kellyanne leaned forward, lowering her voice. "We need to calm this down before it snowballs. Right now, he looks like the steady hand. You look like the storm." Trump glared at her. "And what do you suggest? Sit there like a statue? People don't want statues. They want fighters. I'm not going to play Obama's game. He thinks he's clever. Watch me. I'll tear him apart." Silence fell. No one dared push further. They knew his mind was set. Meanwhile, outside the Roosevelt room, whispers spread among junior staffers checking headlines on their phones. "Did you see the numbers?" one asked nervously. 7 points among independents overnight. A communications aide muttered, "If this keeps up another week, we're toast." The word rippled through the West Wing. In the press office, frantic calls went out to friendly outlets, begging them to question Obama's credibility, to spin his remarks as politically timed. Draft talking points were scribbled, shredded, rewritten, and circulated within hours. The marching orders were blunt: hit hard, stay on message, never engage specifics. But the staff felt the shift. This wasn't strategy, it was rage. And rage couldn't be controlled. It was like trying to put a lid on boiling water. One aide whispered later. "You knew it was going to spill. The only question was when." That night, Washington glittered under a calm sky. The White House windows glowed warm against the darkness. But inside, the mood was combustible: raised voices, hurried footsteps, phones ringing off the hook. Every advisor knew this wasn't a one-day story. Obama had thrown a stone into the pond, and the ripples were racing outward, impossible to contain. By Thursday morning, the pressure dial snapped higher. Networks didn't need fresh material. The Obama-Trump footage ran on a loop, playing in every broadcast, every feed, every podcast. "We could air the same 30 seconds all day and people would still watch," one producer joked. And in many places, they did. On CNN, anchors stood before a glowing wall of screens. People deserve honesty. Beside Obama is a disgrace. The contrast spoke for itself. Over on Fox, hosts went on defense, suggesting Obama's timing was suspect. Yet even in denial, they couldn't avoid replaying the clip. Podcasters rushed in. A popular political show recorded an emergency midnight episode, uploaded before dawn. The host's voice was low, urgent. "This isn't about partisanship anymore. It's about one man looking like a statesman and the other unraveling before our eyes." Within hours, it shot to the top of Spotify's charts. Late-night comics pounced. One sketch had an actor playing Obama calmly reading a grocery list, while across the stage another, in a too long red tie, shouted and flailed at every word. The crowd howled. The image stuck. Trump ranted about bread being rigged. The audience roared. Comedy cut through the tension, but it sharpened the contrast: calm versus chaos. Reporters smelled blood. Obama had dropped hints about financial ties and mishandled documents but left details vague. That vacuum was irresistible. By midday, Politico ran a piece citing unnamed officials. A classified folder had been mishandled months earlier, raising Pentagon concerns. Hours later, the New York Times followed with a deep dive into Trump's foreign business entanglements. Neither story accused him outright, But together they gave Obama's warning teeth. In Philadelphia, and newsroom buzzed like a trading floor. Phones rang non-stop, editors barking, "Call everyone you know in the agencies. I want confirmation." Anything, even a whisper. A young reporter mouthed, "I've got something," before pounding the keyboard. In Los Angeles, the spectacle turned viral. Influencers cut Obama's words into slow-motion montages with dramatic music, millions of views in hours. TikTok teens filmed skits, solemnly nodding during Obama's clip, then parodying Trump's rage with cartoonish flailing. Satirical, yes, but devastating in how fast it spread to younger audiences. In Topeka, Kansas, a mechanic wiped grease from his hands, staring at the waiting room TV. "I voted for him," he admitted to a customer. "But man, he looks like he's cracking." The woman beside him, 60s, shot back, "Obama wouldn't say it unless he knew. Just watch, there's more coming." The frenzy wasn't just media-driven, it was self-sustaining. Networks feared falling behind, so speculation filled the air. Was Obama tipped off by prosecutors? Did he know something hidden from the public? Pundits argued, drew charts, floated theories. White House surrogates fanned out to TV studios armed with the same script. Obama is bitter. Obama is political. Obama is desperate for relevance. But repetition only underlined the weakness. If that's all they've got, one MSNBC analyst sneered, they're already on the back foot. Abroad, the coverage stung. The BBC called it an extraordinary clash between past and present presidents. In France, Le Monde described it as a televised trial without a courtroom. Diplomats whispered privately, the spectacle was humiliating for the American presidency. By evening, the cycle was so relentless it felt like weeks had passed. In truth, less than 48 hours. But by then, every American with a smartphone had seen the clip, most of them more than once. Many could already recite Obama's exact words. And yet, beneath the shouting on TV, one question kept surfacing. If Obama was this precise on air, what else did he know off camera? Journalists debated facts and motives. But across the country, ordinary Americans were having their own arguments, and those conversations were starting to shift the ground. By Friday morning, the frenzy had spilled from studios and newsrooms into diners, barbershops, break rooms, and waiting rooms. Every voice added another layer. In Wichita, Kansas, a diner's breakfast rush slowed as customers leaned toward the TV above the counter. Obama's calm words replayed while the room buzzed. "He looked like he meant it," said a man in overalls, stirring his coffee but not drinking. Across from him, a woman snapped back, "I don't care what he says. Trump's fighting for us. Obama just wants to tear him down." The waitress slid plates onto the table and cut in. "Fighting for us doesn't mean screaming at reporters. Leaders don't lose their cool like that." In Cleveland, clippers hummed inside a crowded barbershop. One barber lowered the radio. "You see Obama last night? Came off like a preacher." "Dropped those words like bricks." A customer laughed from the chair. "Preacher? More like lawyer." "And Trump? He sounded guilty just by how he acted." Another voice shot back from the couch. "That's his style. He's a fighter. You'd rather some quiet liar." The shop erupted, everyone convinced the other side was blind. In Minneapolis, veterans gathered at the VFW hall, beers in hand, eyes fixed on the screen. A retired Marine named Frank spoke first, voice low but steady. "I've been around long enough to know composure when I see it." Obama wasn't guessing, he knows something. An older vet shook his head. "Doesn't matter. Even if it's true, what's anyone gonna do about it? Presidents get away with everything." The debate wasn't confined to pundits anymore. It was spilling into the bloodstream of the country, loud, messy, unavoidable. The room fell quiet, until a third veteran muttered, "Not forever. Not if people finally say enough." Across the Midwest and West Coast, families were having the same kinds of talks. In a Phoenix suburb, a mother drove her kids to school with the radio turned up. Talk show hosts dissected the showdown. From the back seat, her teenage son asked, "Why's everyone freaking out? Can't they just prove it?" She sighed. "Proof takes time. Right now, people are watching how they act. And honestly, Obama looks steady. Trump doesn't." Her daughter added, "Even kids at school are talking about it." Half the lunchroom played the clip. The generational divide was sharp. Younger Americans, glued to TikTok, turned the drama into memes and music edits, Obama's calm words over swelling soundtracks, Trump's shouts looped into punchlines. For them it was entertainment as much as politics. Older Americans saw something darker. In Pittsburgh, a retired steelworker shook his head. Reminds me of Nixon. People didn't need proof right away, they just saw the desperation. Same thing now, religious communities joined in. In Birmingham, after Sunday service, parishioners lingered over coffee and donuts. A pastor, careful with his tone, told the group, "Truth stands still while lies run themselves ragged." That's what you saw this week, calm truth against frantic lies. Some nodded. Others muttered doubt. Even workplaces weren't immune. In a Missouri manufacturing plant, lunch break turned into a shouting match. "Obama's out of line," one worker snapped. "Ex-presidents shouldn't attack sitting ones," a co-worker shot back. "Yeah, but he's the only one with guts to say it. If it's true, we need to hear it." The room split in two. But on one point, everyone agreed the story wasn't going away. The story wasn't fading. Pollsters tracked the shift in real time. In focus groups, the same phrases surfaced again and again. "He seemed guilty. Obama looked credible. It just doesn't sit right." Small but steady changes were taking root in households that once tuned out politics. By week's end, one thing was clear: the debate no longer belonged to politicians or pundits. It belonged to the public. Ordinary Americans were now asking the same question: who do you trust when the truth feels buried under anger and noise? And Washington could feel it. By Monday morning, the storm that began with one interview had crashed onto Capitol Hill. Lawmakers could no longer slip past the cameras lining the hallways. Reporters hurled questions with every step. Do you believe Obama? Should the president show evidence? Is there truth to the claims? Even in the Senate cafeteria, the usual policy chatter was replaced by whispers. A Democratic senator from Colorado muttered, "He cuts straight to the bone." The more Trump yells, the worse he looks. A Republican nearby snapped, "It's theater. Obama just wants relevance." But the edge in his voice betrayed doubt. On the House side, staffers traded nervous confessions in elevators. One aide sighed, "Our phones won't stop ringing." Half the district wants us to defend Trump. Half want us to demand an investigation. No answer wins. Cable news pounced. MSNBC replayed footage of Republicans dodging microphones, one Florida congressman darting into a stairwell like prey. CNN highlighted a moderate from Pennsylvania who finally broke ranks. If a former president raises concerns, they should be taken seriously. That single line cracked Washington's wall of defense. By Monday night, the story had become self-propelling. Every network carried wall-to-wall coverage. Every headline seemed to circle back to the same question: why hasn't Obama said more? Inside Washington, that silence was deafening. Trump lashed out in tweets and shouted rebuttals. But Obama's refusal to add fuel only hid in the sense that his original words were enough, that he had dropped the match and walked away, leaving others to deal with the fire. In private meetings, lawmakers floated possibilities they never would have spoken aloud weeks earlier. A senior Democrat whispered about select committees. A nervous Republican suggested temporary oversight hearings to calm public outrage. The words subpoena and investigation began slipping into conversations once meant to deflect. Meanwhile, the country boiled over. Town halls filled beyond capacity. Arguments spilled into church basements and diners. And voters who had never cared about politics were suddenly quoting Obama's interview back to their representatives. Calm truth against frantic lies had become a mantra printed on protest signs, repeated in TikTok remixes, even painted on the wall outside a federal building in Denver. And through it all, Obama said nothing. For some, that silence was maddening. For others, it was proof of strength. Either way, it kept the pressure focused squarely on Trump and those still defending him. Washington was moving closer to a line no one wanted to name out loud. By the time Trump stormed into the press room that evening, the damage was already done. The image of the memo, with its stark black stamps and bureaucratic precision, had burned into the nation's mind. For weeks, Americans had been told it was theater, noise, politics as usual. But this was different. This was a government document, a paper trail. And suddenly, the question wasn't if Obama had been right, it was how much more he knew. Trump's fury filled the East Room. He waved his hands, called it fake, accused shadowy enemies of conspiring against him. But the cameras caught the sweat, the clenched jaw, the faltering rhythm in his voice. Anger was no longer strength, it was panic on display. Cable news split-screened his press conference with the memo itself, highlighting phrases in real time as analysts fact-checked his denials. Viewers didn't have to take anyone's word for it. They could read the sentences themselves. Procedures were not followed. Risk to national security. In living rooms, airports, and diners across the country, the effect was immediate. A farmer in Iowa told a local reporter, "I don't care if you love or hate Trump, that memo isn't politics. It's a warning." On Capitol Hill, Ripple was titled. By nightfall, two Republican senators quietly called for full clarity from the Department of Defense. A moderate Democrat went further on MSNBC. "If this is true, subpoenas should already be written." And still, Obama said nothing. His silence grew heavier, almost strategic, as if the memo had spoken on his behalf. The clash was no longer about credibility, it was about evidence. And Washington understood what that meant. Things were about to turn from political theater into legal jeopardy, while the man who had dismissed him as irrelevant now looked cornered. By midweek, Washington's rhythm had changed. Reporters camped outside committee rooms. Staffers whispered in hallways. Cable news countdown clocks ticked toward the speaker's expected statement. When it came, it was brief but seismic. Standing at the podium, the speaker said, "The integrity of classified material is not a partisan issue. In light of recent revelations, the House will convene hearings to establish the facts. Subpoenas, if necessary, will follow." The chamber fell into a hush before the shouting began. Questions from the press, cheers and jeers from lawmakers. It was official. Congress had crossed the threshold. Inside the White House, the announcement hit like a hammer. Aides traded panic texts. A senior staffer was overheard muttering, "This isn't spin anymore. This is subpoenas." Trump's legal team urged restraint, but he wanted war. At dawn the next morning, he fired off a string of posts blaming Obama, the deep state, and even his own advisors. Yet the fury only deepened the cracks. A former cabinet secretary, once a loyal defender, told a journalist off record, "We warned him about documents. He didn't listen." Now it's all coming back. The contrast grew unbearable. Obama's silence versus Trump's rage, the cool weight of the memo versus the heat of denial. And as hearings loomed, America sensed the stakes had shifted. This was no longer about trust in leaders, it was about the security of the nation itself. Even in households where opinions remained divided, parents found themselves telling their children that truth may take time, but it always stands taller than noise. By the end of that week, the storm was still raging in Washington, hearings were still looming, and headlines still carried Trump's fury. But in living rooms, classrooms, churches, and coffee shops, the verdict was already forming. History, people realized, would not remember who shouted the loudest. It would remember who stood steady when it mattered most. In the end, Obama never needed another interview. His silence spoke louder than any speech. Trump kept raging online and on camera, but the more he shouted, the less he was believed. What lingered wasn't just the words, but the behavior. History remembers moments not only for what was said, but for how they made people feel. And in this moment, millions felt that calm truth had finally outweighed furious denial. The lesson was simple but powerful. In life, as in leadership, composure often speaks louder than rage. Under pressure, when accusations fly and the world is watching, the steady voice commands the room. Anger may capture a moment, but truth and quiet endurance last. That's the takeaway, not just for politics, but for anyone facing conflict, doubt, or fear. The loudest voice isn't always the honest one. The calmest voice isn't always the weakest. In the long run, it's integrity, not volume, that shapes how history remembers you. So if you followed this story to the end, carry this with you: trust is fragile. Character is priceless, and truth even whispered can move a nation.